let other folks in as they arrive, but let's go ahead and get started just out of respect for everyone's time. Again, I'm Kristen Bailey. I'm serving as the state treasurer this year, and I am hosting this session because I am one of those crazy people that loves event planning. I love the logistics and all of it. So we're going to go through some information about school support and about event planning, just to hopefully share some tips and tricks and share some of my embarrassing pitfalls so that hopefully these don't happen to y'all. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, hopefully. Yay, there we go. And we'll just play the slideshow and get that out of the way. All right, if y'all cannot see that, feel free to unmute and tell me. So events and school support. The first thing we're going to go through is event planning. One of the critical things when you're getting ready to plan an event is to make sure that you get a diverse group of people together. So families, students, staff, community members, whoever might be able to give you some valuable input into putting together a great event. And of course, the PTA is not a fundraising organization. We are a school support and educational enhancement organization, but in order to do those amazing things, we do have to do some fundraising, and that often comes in the form of these events. So it's pretty important that we host events that are well thought out and well planned, that folks enjoy, and therefore we can raise the money that we need in order to provide programs and support for our schools. If it's an annual event, like if it's a fall festival or a spring carnival that your school and PTA do every year, make sure that you go back and look at the binders or the notes from the previous years. That'll often give you a lot of insight into what went well and what maybe didn't, contacts to call on for donations. So it's important to look through those notes and talk to the previous event chair. Reach out to them and say, okay, you know, what would you have done differently? What do you wish you had known going into it? Planning your event. Really the key, I think, to having a great, enjoyable event is to do the planning on the front end, so you're not scrambling the day of. So make sure that you get together with your team of volunteers that's going to be helping with the event. Plan an agenda, really think through what you need to cover. Address, I'm not going to read all that to you because you can read it yourself, but address all the main questions about, you know, what do you need? Where is it going to be? What time? You know, do you need somebody who can run audio visual? If you're not good at that, you need to recruit somebody who is. Are you going to serve refreshments? Do you need to talk to your venue about how that happens and whether that's allowed? You don't want any surprises when you show up with all these wonderful refreshments and your venue says, oh, we don't allow food and drinks. And do you need sponsors? Would it help to find business sponsors, local businesses, families that want to support your event financially, and what kind of difference that can make in terms of the scale and scope of your event? Promoting your event, you know, planning the best event in the world is a great thing, but if nobody shows up because nobody knew about it, that's not super helpful. So the ways you can do that at school, you know, include morning announcement messages. Lots of schools still make morning announcements. Put an article in your school newspaper if there is one. Make sure that you have drop off and pick up locations like your car line, have people with posters and signage. Flyers, obviously, in the school, on bulletin boards, all of that is great for letting folks know in the school, and making sure that you're just inundating them with reminders and messages and all of those things. Send home invitations with students. Make sure that if you have a multilingual population in your school, that you are providing, you know, information in all the languages. Use your social media, use your PTA and school websites to share event details, and a special phone blast or e-blast from your principal or your PTA president can be helpful in just reminding folks and letting them know that the event is coming. In the community, you can reach out to local businesses that are right around your school, ask if they'll post your flyer in their store window. Make sure that you target also those smaller neighborhood groups, you know, community associations, neighborhood blogs, things like that. If you have bulletin boards like at your local grocery store, that's also a really good place to post your event information. So again, like I said, preparing is key to making sure that you do not feel crazy on the day of your event. Make sure in advance you create and print out any necessary signage to let people know where to go, what to do. Walk through your event space. look for any sort of choke points where you've got, your check-in line is going to be in one direction, but people are trying to move about through that area. So you may want to restructure some of that, or maybe put up some, cones or ropes that show people where to go, just to keep everything flowing smoothly. An event supply bucket. This is my go-to for every event. And it is just like a clear bucket that has all the stuff that I end up needing during an event: tape and scissors and markers and paper clips. Balloon weights, I'll always go in my event bucket, because you can use them to weight down pieces of paper or things that might blow away if you're outside. So just go through and think about all of those things that you may need last minute and need to have on hand, so you're not trying to run into the school and rummage through the secretary's desk trying to find a pair of scissors. Provide any necessary volunteer training. I find that folks are really willing to help out, especially people like to be asked. So if you're not getting volunteers for your event, really reach out directly and individually to folks and say, I could really use your help. Would you mind doing this or that? But make sure you tell them exactly what you need them to do. Nobody likes to show up to volunteer and think, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how this works. So provide your volunteers with clear instructions and training. Make sure you confirm with any vendors a day or two before, again, to avoid surprises. If you have been on the ball and booked it 30 days in advance, make sure that you just circle back with them right before the event, just to remind them. Allow plenty of time for setup. There is always some sort of hiccup, something that isn't working quite like it should. So you want to make sure that you keep everybody's stress level low by allowing lots of time for setting up at your event. So hosting the actual event. Make sure you post welcome and directional signs. I do love balloons if your venue allows them and you don't have an issue with latex allergies among your students. And make sure, again, they're in multiple languages if that is appropriate for your school, to facilitate traffic flow. You want people to know, oh, I go in here, I buy tickets or whatever here. Your school administrators, teachers are a great help when it comes to greeting people. All the families always love to see that the teachers are there and they're involved and they're supporting the PTA. Make sure you do consider accessibility for any of your school population that may have disabilities. Also, for some of our students, our younger students in particular, if there is going to be your mascot on hand, you might want to make sure that you include that in your event information, because some kids are not happy with the giant mascot. So parents need to know in advance so they can talk to their little ones about that. Ensure that there's plenty of parking. Nobody likes to hassle with trying to find parking, and you're driving around and your kids are ready to go into the event. And so make sure that you've got plenty of parking or a way to address that. Another thing that I found that's really helpful is if you are in a neighborhood school, so there are going to be folks parking all along the streets in the neighborhood, it is always considerate to put a flyer in the mailboxes of the surrounding homes to say, hey, the PTA is hosting this event. It's going to be great. You're certainly welcome to attend, but just wanted to let you know that it's coming, and so there may be more traffic in the neighborhood. I usually include my name and phone number, my cell phone number on that, in case someone accidentally parks in front of their driveway or blocks them somehow. That way they can reach out to you and you can make an announcement if any of that happens. Generally, people are very considerate, but occasionally it's just, someone inadvertently blocks it, and that lets your community know that you're trying not to be a hassle with your event. When you're hosting, you need to make sure that you keep safety as your number one priority always. So make sure that if you're having bouncy houses, that you've hired a reputable company and they have staff there that are watching the events and making sure that all the bouncy houses are safe. Make sure that you know your venues. If you're at school or another venue, their emergency procedures, safety guidelines. Is there, a medical tent? Is that necessary? Or is there just somebody with, a box of Band-Aids on hand? Make sure that you are checking your weather. I actually was hosting an event when a tornado came through. And so it was, what we knew in advance, what we needed to do with everyone, how to keep everybody safe, where to move everybody while that went by, so it was a little 15-minute ordeal, but then it was fun and we just continued and it was great. But it was because we were prepared and we knew exactly what to tell folks to do. Make sure that there are age-appropriate activities for all attendees. We find this particularly at the elementary level. If you're going to have families that likely have younger ones, make sure that you have at least something for the little ones to do, as well as for all of your bigger kids to enjoy. Manage your volunteers. Again, necessary training in advance so they are clear on what they're doing and you don't find out in the middle or after your event that, oh, they didn't realize they were supposed to hand out tickets for this or that. One thing that I find is really helpful both for setup and during the event is if you put a checklist of volunteer tasks, tape it to a table, put a pin there so they can mark it off. That way your volunteers can go to the list and say, oh, somebody needs to set up, 3 sets of balloons over here. I can do that. And then when they're finished, they just mark it off. That way you don't have a bunch of volunteers coming to you and having to wait for your attention until they can get some instruction about what to do next. It just tends to make things flow a little more efficiently. Make sure that when you are recruiting volunteers for your critical tasks, like taking money, setting up AV equipment, greeting your vendors and telling them where to set up, that you use folks that you know or have had some experience, and you can that's always just kind of a feel it out and make sure that for those critical tasks that you've got folks in place that you know are going to be on top of it. Track volunteer hours. That way you can tell the next event chair, you're going to need this many volunteers and it takes about this long. Also for recognition, if you want to recognize your volunteers who really went above and beyond. For your service hours volunteers, you can, if you are having trouble finding volunteers, using high school students for some of the tasks, obviously not those involving money, counting money, collecting money, but for lots of other tasks, handing out tickets, managing games, whatever, you can get your high school students who need Honor Society and Beta Club service hours. That's a great resource. So reach out to your PTA if you are an elementary or middle, contact your PTA at the high school and say, hey, we need to get in touch with somebody who can help us with volunteers. But make sure you sign their sheets because those hours don't count for your high schoolers if they don't get their sheet signed. So finalizing the event, be sure to thank your volunteers and your sponsors. Do it in person, do it on your social media, do it in announcements in your newsletter. Everyone wants to know that their contribution really made a difference. Meet with your committee to debrief, get your notes for next year, what went well, what went wrong, so that you set up the next person to host the event to be successful. If it was a fundraising event, which many of these are, make sure that you tell people how much money was raised and thank all the attendees for their support. Folks like to know, like, hey, that was so fun and we did a great thing. We raised a lot of money for the school. Emphasize the impact as well. If your participation allowed us to raise this much money for a new playground or for new equipment, folks, again, just like to know that they made a difference, and it will cause them to be more likely to attend your next event. Always a good thing. So that is sort of event planning. If you have questions, feel free to jump in, or you can put them in the chat, or we'll cover them at the end, whatever. School support. So this is the primary function of the PTA. We are there really to provide support and educational enhancements for the students and the teachers. So it looks different though for every PTA unit. There is not sort of a one size fits all for school support. So we'll talk about a few of the common ways that PTAs provide school support. A lot of PTAs run a school store, and that can be a daily or a weekly or every other Friday, however that works well at your school. Hosting an 8th grade dance, putting on a fall festival or spring carnival, those events we were talking about. Book fairs, red ribbon weeks, walk and wheel days, all of those are things that we can do to support the school. Good school support starts with good communication, particularly with your principal, your administrative staff, to talk about what does your school need? What are their ideas and what do they want to see happening in the school? Do they want mini grants? Are your teachers looking to enhance their classrooms and their curriculum in various ways? And the PTA can work to support that. A lot of PTAs bring in special topic speakers about internet safety or ways to pay for college. Those sort of lunch and learn opportunities, I think a lot of communities really appreciate. And it doesn't have to be limited to just the parents at your school. It can also be, you can invite outside community members to attend. Arts enrichment, there's never enough funding in the school districts for arts enrichment. So that's often something that PTAs are asked to provide as far as school support. A couple of other things that we often do as PTAs are, the lunch break, parent volunteers to sit in the cafeteria with the kids while the teachers get to just enjoy their lunch and are not opening juice boxes and making sure everybody's not being crazy during lunch. A school luncheon, like a grandparents' special friends kind of luncheon. Volunteers to manage the school's marquee, like the signage out front. Sometimes that's something that PTA can do to support the school. It takes a task off of maybe the secretary or front office staff, and it allows us to promote what's going on with PTA as well as events and happenings at the school. Volunteers to help shelve books in the library, help with plays and special projects in the classroom. So those are all things that you can consider as far as school support. Like I mentioned, walk and wheel day, family fitness days, those are often something that can get really the whole family engaged. A couple of things PTAs do not do. We do not pay school employees. And the reason for that makes sense when you think about it, that if PTA did not have a great fundraising year and did not have the funds to cover that, all of a sudden somebody can't get paid for doing their job. So that's why we typically we never pay employees, but we can fund other things like mulch, so that the school then has enough money in their budget to pay for the school employees. Partnering with local businesses, this is a great thing to have, like spirit nights where local businesses profit share. They donate a portion of the proceeds from your special spirit night event. And that's kind of a quick and easy way. It requires very little volunteer involvement. It just kind of happens and you get a check, which is great. Lots of PTAs, like I said, do this lots of different ways. I spend a lot of time looking at other PTAs, other states, other communities to see what they're doing that's fun and exciting. And you can always borrow and adapt ideas from other people in order to enhance your school support offerings. It's important too, I think sometimes we get into the habit of just doing what we've done every year. It's like, okay, it's time for donuts with dads or whatever. But incorporating some new things is often sort of a fun little boost for your PTA. Are there any questions? We kind of moved through that quickly, so I'm happy if you have questions about what that looks like or other ideas to share. I'm going to quit sharing my screen. There we go. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. This is really intended to be a brief overview of just to give you some ideas, get the thoughts and discussion rolling within your own PTA. Anybody have questions?
Hey, this is Carrie. I'm sorry, I'm in a coffee shop and it's really loud, so I apologize. But do you happen to have like checklists that y'all have used in the past for volunteers or stuff like that, just to kind of give us an idea? I think that's a great thing because we usually have like one person that everybody's going, hey, do we do this? Do we do this? What do we do? And I was like, well, that's such a good idea to do a checklist. Like,
yes, where all you have to be is refer to the table. There's a list.
Yeah.
I do have some now. Obviously, I'm happy to share them as examples. A lot of it will or won't apply, but it at least can get you started thinking about it. So I will make sure that I post that along with this video on these slides so that you can take a look at that. So it'll be on the SCPTA website under Leader Resources.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Of course. Any other questions? Well, you guys get the Rockstar Volunteer Awards for attending this morning. I know we've had several of these trainings, so we really genuinely appreciate your participation and your involvement and your commitment to the PTA. I hope everybody has a fantastic day. Call me if you have any questions anytime. Thanks.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. Y'all have fun. Enjoy the rest of summer.
Thank you, Kristen. This was great.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.